All right, all right, all right. We should be good. Wow, this is actually happening. So, this is crazy. But yeah, guys. Of course, this is going to be episode one of the rugby recap. We have the Kiwi lads, of course, and myself, Rugby Itch. Yeah, this has been a long time in the actually to actually happen. Yeah, of course, great to have you on. I mean, just let us know, like, really just how this kind of began in the first place. How do we kind of create this podcast from the beginning?
Well, we've done probably about 50 collabs over the channel's history.
Maybe even
Uh,
more.
whether that's whether that's predictions or whether that is, I guess, just lineups and everything along those lines. So we thought, why not put it somewhere else where we can kind of go a little bit more in depth about the rugby happenings of the world. And there is
Yeah.
plenty coming up with the World Cup just around the corner, and even closer around the corner, the Rugby Championship as well will certainly be one to watch out for. But yeah, I think that's the general gist of it, isn't it? It's just
Essentially.
we've done a lot of videos.
Yeah, no, I mean, just to give a bit of background to obviously everyone watching, I mean, the way we kind of like met each other in the first place was actually through the Rugby Guru because he's done obviously collaborations with us in the past, and he kind of just mentioned to me actually just one time, just like, hey, this guy Hamish who I do a few collabs with, and I think you'd be great together if you guys I don't know did a collab once or two, and I was like, yeah, I'll send him a message. So we kind of just started that we started. I mean, this is the thing is that guys, you remember, I'm still like I'm still just doing my masters now, and the way I think about this is that I met Hamish and the Kiwi lads like back like when I was in year two of university. So this is like a long time ago in terms of like when we actually first met and just how many collabs we've done is like ridiculous because. But yeah, of course, we like Hamish said, we will continue this obviously on this channel. We'll give you guys more of an overview of kind of just the rugby world in general and just what's happening in the meantime. But yeah, I think it kind of just gives a brief background in terms of kind of the reason why we did this podcast in the first place. Of course, before we kind of get into the big chunk of this, definitely like the video, guys, and subscribe to our channel. That would be greatly appreciated. But yeah, I mean, let's just get straight into this. Let's talk about the rugby championship. I mean, this is like the main reason why we're doing this. Literally, like, the rugby championship is going to be massive this year. Again, we have to remember it's a condensed version. So, do you think they'll have any part to play in terms of which teams maybe do best or maybe not get the best opportunity? Like, what do you think?
I think it benefits, in a way, every side to have a chance of winning it because at the end of the day, if you win 3 games or if you win 2, you're a long way towards taking out that rugby championship. And some sides are probably going to be using it more as a working out what combinations work heading into that Rugby World Cup. But for the side that manages to get themselves the victory, it's going to be a massive confidence booster heading into France. And yeah, out of the 4 sides, I mean, of course, there are the favourites, which at the moment is actually New Zealand, then South Africa second, then it goes Australia and then Argentina. But it wouldn't surprise me one bit if Argentina are able to pull off, I don't know, at least maybe one upset throughout this Rugby
Me too.
Championship format.
Yeah, no, I think Argentina definitely have the opportunity to. I mean, they're one of the teams that were again when you look at like the starting lineups, what we just saw for the Argentina side as well as the All Blacks side. Argentina really have put out a pretty good, a pretty good side, I'd say overall, a really strong side indeed, and has kind of a lot of experience under their belts. So I definitely say, I mean, just going off the first game, they definitely have an opportunity to do that. But yeah, I think overall, I mean, within this rugby championship, I think there's gonna be I still think there will be a few upsets in here. I don't think we're just gonna see like like what we predict overall. I think most predictions will say like, oh, the All Blacks or like South Africa will win. They'll win like 3 games easily or something. I think it'll be a lot harder than that actually, because you have to remember, guys, that I think only once in the history of of rugby championships where a team who's won the rugby championship has actually gone on to win the Rugby World Cup, and that's only happened, of course, last time this happened, when Safa, of course, won the Rugby Championship, the condensed version, by the way, as well, and then went on to win the Rugby World Cup. So we've only had that once because previous times, obviously, we had I think it was like Australia in 2015 who won. I think it was 2015 and 2011 who won the condensed rugby championships, and of course, both of those times the All Blacks went on to win. So yeah, I think it's really up for grabs in terms of what happens there. But I think overall, it's gonna be great to see who kind of comes out on top. I mean, What do you think? We'll just go over each team really, like just about like what we think about each team. Well, first off, with I guess like I mean we've talked about them already, but Argentina, like what do you think overall from Argentina? Like what do you think we can kind of get from them within this competition?
I feel like anytime you see an Argentine player playing overseas, whether that's the top 14, the URC, or any of those competitions, they always seem to be able to make an impact. Like I see that they have actually gone with Juan Matan Gonzalez as the number 7 this year, which is quite exciting because last year and the year before, in fact, he actually broke onto the scene, did extremely well for the Pumas. And, you know, they're always going to bring the physicality, Argentina. They're always going to bring that passion. And that sometimes helps them get over the line because a lot of people are looking at that All Black Springboks game going, that game's going to decide the rugby championship. Yeah. But I think a little bit of an honourable mention needs to be that Australia versus Argentina game.
I agree.
Because that could decide a lot in the rugby championship as well, not just the game between the Boks and the ABs. I think that Argentina, they've gone from strength to strength over the last few years. They've got a decent pool of the Rugby World Cup, so they'll be building towards that, hoping to get in that top 2. I believe that England is the real challenger for them in their group, and then they've also got Japan in there as well, don't they? Which could be
I believe so, yeah.
A bit of a dark horse. And then who else have they got in their group for the?
Is it Chile?
I think so, yeah. And then there's one other side. Is it Namibia? No, I think New Zealand have Namibia, don't they?
Yeah, no, I think it's Chile, Samoa, Japan.
Samoa's the other one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, they'll be looking at that Rugby World Cup group going, we've got the potential of being able to make it out of this group. And, you know, same thing with the Rugby Championship. They've got the potential of going a long way in this comp. It's just they need to make sure that they're converting the passion into results out there on the field. And in this first game up against the ABs, maybe they haven't had as much time under their belt playing as they would have liked, because at the end of the day, a lot of these All Blacks guys are just coming off Super Rugby, pretty physical season. A few of the Argentine players coming from the top 14, and a few of the other overseas competitions. But it's whether or not they've had long enough to try and gel again, because when they do start working together well, it's when we start to see some magical moments for them. And yeah, their backline's looking very good for that game up against the ABs. Should be good. Hopefully they go all right.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with everything you said there. I mean, Argentina as a whole, they're one of my favorite sides to watch, really, within just out of all the international teams, really, because they always, again, they're a bit of both in terms of attacking rugby as well as defensive, and that's kind of what they're known for. And they're really one of those teams where I think at the moment you could say since Czech has come on board, they're really more of a defensive team actually, because you have the likes of Pablo Matera, you did have the likes of Marcus Kremer, but of course he won't be available for this rugby championship. But you'd always have like him, Juan Martin Gonzalez, and that kind of loose forward trio just itself, it's just so defensive in terms of what they can do. But again, like you said, in terms of the backs, they have a lot of good attacking players now, and a lot of young guns under their belts. I mean, they have Santiago Caceres. Yeah, I mean, Boffelli's more of the experienced player, you could say. So, yeah, I mean, overall, they have a great side. I am really looking forward to see what they can do. And yeah, I'm hoping I can get their Rugby World Cup jersey, because that's one of the few Rugby World Cup teams few international teams actually I have in terms of jerseys, and I've been eyeing up that jersey for a very long time. So I hope I can get that. But yeah, I mean, is there anything else you want to say in terms of Argentina?
I would say, they've got a good chance. That's the main thing. And I hope that it isn't just that it seems like they've got a good chance, because we've seen that happen in past years, how they've had momentum and then it's gone away. But I'm hoping this year is going to be the one that they actually really step it up, because, they're actually in that group of teams that I think have a really good shot at this Rugby World Cup. Because, as long as they get out of that group stage, in quarterfinals rugby, anything can happen. And yeah, who knows? Maybe they go all right.
Yeah, no, it'll be good to see what they can do, of course. I guess we'll then move on then towards, the Wallabies in terms of what they've done. I mean, of course, they are under the helm now of Eddie Jones, so it does feel a bit I guess just unusual to kind of like be in this situation really, because Eddie Jones, of course, I've only seen him in my lifetime. I've only seen him as the Japan coach, of course, as well as the England coach. So for him to actually come down towards the Southern Hemisphere is like a new thing for me. So it's gonna be very fascinating to see what he can obviously do in terms of I guess like the Wallabies team and Wallabies setup really, but. I think they have a strong side. I think he's actually chosen a few guys in there from this rugby championship, of course, who just I actually would have not gone with. I mean, there's a few guys there. I mean, who have been left out. I mean, like Harry Wilson's probably the big omission, I'd say, from this this whole thing. So yeah, he's definitely one that I'm like. Oof, I mean, it's a big miss, but again, they have decided to go with someone like I think they're going with Rob Valentini, right? Are they going with Rob Valentini? I think at number 8. Yeah, so it's going to be
So
very
he's still in there.
fascinating.
Samu's going to be off the bench as well, who some people thought might have been in that starting lineup. It's tricky. They've got a lot of good loose forwards.
They have Tom Hooper, right? Who's actually going to start, I believe, for the Wallabies. That's a big. I'm not. I guess not. Yeah, it's just a big addition overall because I think he's going to be a debutant, of course, on that day. So to have your debut against the Box in Pretoria is going to be that's a challenge in itself. But yeah, I think overall it's going to be really good to see what happens in terms of I guess the Wallabies. I mean, who do you say is kind of like a one-to-watch player? I guess overall, like who do you kind of picture your eye out?
See, they've got a few new names in there, but then they've also got those older, experienced guys because, I mean, someone like a Suliasi Vunivalu, if he does what he did for the Reds throughout Super Rugby Pacific, I think he could be a very dangerous winger and could play very well for the Wallabies. But then you've got those more experienced guys on his inside like Nick White, Quade Cooper, who, if they aren't playing well, it doesn't matter who you've got on the wing because that ball ain't getting out to him. So I think the big thing's going to be make sure that backline is working very nicely. Samu Karevi in the midfield, I hope that he avoids injury right through this World Cup cycle because he is a fantastic player and can really offer them a lot when attacking. But yeah, someone like a young Tom Hooper or maybe even looking at Nick Frost from what he was able to do for the Brumbies throughout Super Rugby Pacific. I feel like he's certainly going to be an awesome one to watch when he puts the international kit on. The big thing is there's quite a difference between Eddie Jones and Ian Foster. And that is that Eddie Jones seems like he's actually going to use some of his new additions into his squad. Whereas as we've seen old Ian, he's only using one.
It's crazy. Yeah, we'll get more into like what Ian's done in that sense. But I guess just kind of going off what you said in terms of the Wallabies. I mean, I think if there's a one-to-watch player, I would actually say it's Vunivalu. He's actually the one that kind of has my interest peaked in terms of this game because, again, a lot of people have kind of written him off, say, throughout the years. I'd say for the last 2 years because he only joined, I think, rugby union, you could say. I think back, I think it was 2019. It was I think it was very early. I think it was just before, kind of COVID hit. And again, he hasn't had kind of the opportunity as much as an opportunity to kind of express himself in all of these games. But now he's kind of getting regular footy in. He's actually now showing that he has that try scored ability. And I mean, throughout this year, guys, you have to remember, I think he scored 9 tries. Am I wrong in saying that? I think he scored I think it was up to 9 tries overall. So yeah, he's definitely someone that I'm like, wow, he's done pretty well, I'd say, in that sense. So yeah, I think overall he's someone that I'm kind of looking out for. I'm like, ooh, okay, he could maybe get on the try scoring list. But yeah, I mean, is there anything else in terms of, I guess, Australia? Is there anything that kind of piques your interest in terms of what they could do in this rugby championship?
I'm still annoyed that the Bledisloe Cup is only 2 matches.
Yeah.
I feel like it needs to be 3 because if it was a 3-match series, I kind of feel like there's going to be a 1-1 scenario. And then, I mean, the All Blacks would retain in that case, but having that decider would have still been ideal. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting for the Wallabies because new coach, we've seen England have their new coach for the Six Nations. We've seen the same with Wales, and they didn't quite fire the way that some people expected them to. But sometimes with that new coach, it just takes that little bit longer. The big question for the Wallabies is, have they got enough time before that World Cup to be able to, I guess, strategize and use the strategy of Eddie Jones to their advantage? But I like what he's doing in terms of bringing in a few of those younger guys. I see Carter Gordon going to be making his debut off the bench for the Wallabies. And, you know, it seems like it's a bright future at the moment for them, as long as he doesn't do what some people are saying that he might, and what he's even said that he might. And he was saying a while ago, oh, I might just leave after the World Cup. So hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully he plans his way towards 2027. I think it's just Eddie's mind games, which at the moment seem to be very prominent.
Oh, that's for sure. I mean, he always has mind games up his sleeve. But I was actually surprised. I mean, maybe it's not what Eddie Jones wants to do with Australia, but I was actually surprised to see that he didn't go for someone like Jed Holloway at 6, because he always he's always been known for going with someone as more like a lock / enforcer in terms of that 6 position, who can also help in terms of the lineouts. But again, he's put a lot of trust obviously in Tom Hooper, in this game. And it's interesting because it's not really the way I kind of expected it to go. So, I kind of am intrigued really by this in that sense, in terms of how that kind of plays out. Because, I mean, again, like, do you know who's? I think it's Pete Sommer, right? Who's the replacement off the bench in terms of the loose forwards, right? So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens on that front. But I guess like Will Skelton is another one. I'm really fascinated to see how he does, because they're coming off another good season for Stade Francais. So it's going to be really fascinating to see if he can kind of make that step up, you can say, in terms of the international games. So overall, just really excited to see what Australia can do. I think the other side, I think everyone just doesn't know what's going to happen. I think they're going to be like a surprise team of this competition, which is weird to say, because normally you just say it's probably the Argentinians, because again, you just don't know what they're going to do. But I think really this time it is really the Wallabies. So it's going to be good to see what happens on that front. But I guess we'll then turn our eyes then towards we'll go with the Springboks first, and then we'll finish with the All Blacks. I mean, with the Springboks, I mean, they definitely have an interesting tactic, you could say, which they're kind of reusing, you could say, for this World Cup once again. And for all of you that don't know, the tactic is that they are going to send they're playing obviously some players now for this game against the Wallabies in Pretoria, but they've already sent players to New Zealand to prepare for next week's game, which is a bold move. But at the same time, they're kind of just using it again because they said, hey, it worked once, so it might work again. So hopefully that kind of works out in their favor, because they want to kind of get used to the conditions beforehand. But do you think that's a smart move by the whole South African coaching team? Do you think it will work out?
I think that they coach in a different way than most other teams do. But when you're the world champions,
you can
it's hard to say that it doesn't work. They've got themselves the cup to prove it. That last time when they did it, it was effective. They also, like you said, won the rugby championship in that year. So, I mean, it's certainly going to test out the depth that they've got, seeing as they are sending quite a few experienced players overseas. Also, alongside that, keeping a few experienced players in South Africa, which I assume some of those boys will then have to fly over. And maybe that's why they've decided to send some guys early. It's pretty much a little bit more of a motivation for the players playing in the game up against the Wallabies. It's, if you're doing well, you're coming with us. If you're not doing so well, you might have to stay behind. We don't want to pay your airfares for you to go watch the game. So, it's split them down the middle.
Oh, so I was just going to say, I was surprised to actually see Damien Williams, by the way, included in the starting 23, because I think you were right actually in your prediction, by the way, on your channel. I mean, that because I was actually like, wow, they actually did it. They actually went with him. And well, again, they didn't actually go, of course, with because 100 Pollard, of course, is out, guys, but they actually went with Libock. So it's really fascinating to see they've gone with two kind of 10s in the sense for this game, and they haven't gone with any for kind of just to go to New Zealand. So they must really trust that kind of I guess that combination. I mean, what do you think about that? Like, do you think it's the right move to kind of have two of them in the same game and kind of get some, I don't know, I guess minutes under their belt, or do you think it's better for one of them to be in New Zealand already to kind of get used to the conditions?
Well, I think that was almost about the only thing I got right when it came to that Springboks prediction. Unfortunately, that leak that they showed earlier on, like I think it was maybe a day before we recorded, they leaked a side, and it was pretty much 100% correct. But we threw in a few wild cards just to mix it up a little bit. And I mean, we shouldn't have in a way, because a lot of them were not correct. We should have just listened to it, but then it could have ended up being a pretty similar video, I guess you could say. if our teams were identical, which they started off being a little bit with our front row. But, it's an interesting choice. I did say that they might go with it, though, because I feel if Marnie Libok is kicking well and he's getting his conversions over, that they may actually decide to put Willemser on for that last 20 minutes, similar to what I said in that preview, and maybe Libok starts the game up against the ABs. I think that might be the thinking behind it. Either that or just trying to maybe test out Willemser as well. Maybe they even get 40 minutes each and see who plays better, and whoever does then plays the All Blacks. So there's a few ways that they may look at it. Elton Yankee's name, I've hardly seen it thrown around yet. So I'm not too sure whether or not he has actually flown to New Zealand early or whether he's been left out. I don't think I saw his name on that list, though.
I was going to say, I didn't see him on that list as well. Yeah.
So he might just be in limbo at the moment. Not sure whether he is staying or going.
Interesting.
Possibly. I mean, South Africa, the benefit they've got is they've got a second home game, don't they? They will be playing up against Argentina for the last game of the Rugby Championship. Do you know if they play twice up against Argentina? Because I know that New Zealand, they do. I thought so. Yeah. One in each country, isn't it?
Yeah, so they play the third round. They play in South Africa. I think it's also is it also in Pretoria? I'm not sure where it's been.
Depends on what stadium isn't like torn
I definitely know it's not in the Stormer Stadium because that's been that's been renovated right now. But no, it'll definitely be somewhere in South Africa, of course. And then like I said, the week after, I think August the 5th, same time as the second game for the Australia New Zealand game. That will be when I think the Springboks head down towards Argentina, because that'll be technically like their first warm-up game, you can say, before the Rep World Cup. So
and that's an interesting one, because when you look at where Argentina are on the rankings and where South Africa are on the rankings, like that could affect a little bit in terms of, where both of the sides finish. Like that might be the little boost that South Africa need, depending on which other games they have won of the Rugby Championship. That could boost them up maybe even into second place. I know that it's relatively close between the top about 4 sides. So whoever's winning these Rugby Championship games heading into those warm-up fixtures for the Rugby World Cup, they'll get themselves a nice little confidence boost. I feel like South Africa, though, with the way that they do play, physicality is always forefront. And unfortunately, as fun as it is to look at this Rugby Championship, I'm nervous because a lot of players are going to get injured throughout the next 2 months, unfortunately. If it's anything like the URC, if it's anything like Super Rugby, and now it's at that stage, it's a little bit too close to that World Cup to be able to recover in time, which I think is why, Grant had it perfectly just before, how Willemser has got a little bit of an injury. So the last thing you want to do is chuck him out there and then re-aggravate. That's the word I was after.
Nice.
Re-aggravate that injury. And then all of a sudden, you're not going to France, which is a massive shame for these younger players who have been building right up through the cycle to then get that opportunity. So,
yeah, exactly.
I would say, to be honest, 5 players out of all these Rugby Championship sides probably going to end up with injuries by the end of the competition. And, you just hope that they're not anything too serious and that they are able to recover in only about a month and a half, because that's how long they're going to have for that World Cup.
I guess in terms like the box, like do you consider, like, because I know like you can obviously say that Libok is probably, you can say the backup maybe to Handré Pollard maybe for the Rugby World Cup, but do you think Willemser is more fitted towards that 10 position, or do you think he's more of a cover, you could say, for Willie LaRue in that 15? Because again, he can also play if he wanted to. He can play in the centers if needed. But do you consider more as a 10, or do you see him more as a 15? Like what do you see?
I personally would probably say a 15, just because they don't seem to want to go with his kicking boot. And I feel like when you've got him at 10, they don't really have anyone in that back line who would kick, other than that's normally when they bring in Faf de Klerk as the kicking option. So, for me, he's more of, like, I like him at fullback. He's good under the high ball. And also alongside that, throughout the Stormers season, it was actually Libok at 10, Willemser at 15, and that was working pretty well. Although honourable mention, of course, to Clayton Blumekes, because he was doing very well at fullback for the Stormers, and it was one of the reasons they got far in the competition. I think a lot of people underestimated the impact that man had on the side early on in the season to be able to help them towards where they got to. I'm sure Grant will agree with that, seeing as he is a Stormers man through and through. But yeah, I feel like with the fact that he isn't really putting his hand up as that kicking option because he's not kicking for the Stormers as well, maybe that is due to the lack of confidence that he was given at international level. I'd say, I'll probably have him 15 alongside Willie LaRue.
Fair enough. I think I would also have the same because the game that kind of like just the reason why I say that is because I always look back towards that England South Africa game, back in the Autumn Nations, and I always remember that try like where England, I think it was Marcus Smith, he put a high ball in the air. It was David Williamson who just caught it, and then he just ran around the right wing, little bit of a sidestep, and then passed it towards I think it was like Willie LaRue, and it was just unbelievable. Like because you can just tell that his positioning in terms of the high ball is actually very good. In that sense. So that's kind of why I see him more as a 15 compared towards that 10. But yeah, I mean, I guess is there anything else you want to talk about in terms of the box before we head into the final team in terms of this rugby championship?
I think they have a game plan and they're confident in it. So I hope it works out for them because I know that sometimes they can get criticised quite heavily. Their side, just like all sides at international level. You have the passionate fans that will either back you or go against you. But, overall, I think that they've got a really good shot in this rugby championship. And also, back-to-back World Cups doesn't sound a mile away if they do find themselves the form that they need. And with the tests that they are using throughout this rugby championship and also in those warm-up games to the World Cup, if it all goes well, they're going to be a hard side to beat.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, really. I think for this rugby championship, it's going to be pretty close, I'd say, throughout all the sides. But I guess we'll get more into that in terms of after we talk about all four teams. But, for the final team, of course, the All Blacks, of course, you have heavy investments as a Kiwi yourself. But, what do you think overall? Like, do you think the Kiwis, because they have really named kind of a different squad to what they normally or what you would normally expect, really. Again, like, do you think this will be like kind of the same squad what we'll see from the World Cup, or do you think because of injuries and maybe because they wanted to include a few bolters, that's the reason why it's changed?
I think changing the squad is one thing, but changing your lineups is another. And we've seen that firsthand for the game up against Argentina. He had 23 options. He had about 6 debuts. He's only changed one player, and that is Amoni Narawa. Everyone else, whether that's Dane Coles making his way back into the AB side in the starting lineup up against Argentina, whether that's going back to Geordie Barrett at 12, Odin Barrett at 15, Caleb Clark out on that left wing. It seems to be he has a plan.
Yeah, exactly.
No one's really backing that plan, but he will keep on persisting until it's
outrageous.
But hopefully a few of those other guys, like some of Sama Penifenau, in the future, I'd like to see him at least get one crack for the ABs. I feel like he would be a great option for 6, definitely if Shannon Frizzell isn't able to perform in this game up against Argentina. Sean Stevenson in the lineup prediction. You will remember I didn't put him in the side at all, not because I wouldn't, but because I knew that Ian Foster wouldn't. And no surprises there. He didn't put him in the squad, unfortunately. But also alongside him, they didn't go with Tamaiti Williams. I felt that this was a perfect opportunity to put the big man in.
That's my fault.
But just Ian Foster things, isn't it? I guess at the end of the day, he must be confident in the players that he's putting out there on the field, hoping to give a few of those other guys a chance. And he did say about trying to build chemistry for a few of the players in this game heading forward, which I believe is why they've decided to go with Smith and McKenzie, just to test out that combination, see if it is going to be effective.
I was actually just about to ask you, like, what do you think about McKenzie over Mo'unga for this game? Because that's a big call. We always said we kind of said even before this rugby championship that whoever won that Super Rugby final between Mo'unga and McKenzie would most likely get more minutes, you could say, throughout this rugby championship. But they've actually gone with McKenzie to start off. So it's interesting to see that they want to test that out. What do you think of that? Like, do you think it's kind of just to give him a go, see what's going to happen first, and then go to Mo'unga for the next 2 games? Or do you think, okay, we'll see what happens here, and then maybe test Mo'unga for the next game, and then decide what to do in the third? Like, what do you think will happen?
I think that's probably the gist of it is to have Mo'unga
Okay.
as the Springboks fly half game, or like as the fly half for that Springboks contest. And then, like you actually said in the prediction, pick who did the better job, and then from there, put them in for that game up against the Wallabies. But I did expect to see Damian McKenzie off the bench just because he does cover that fly half and fullback role rather than just the one that Mo'unga does offer. But I guess worst comes to worst, you can reshuffle McKenzie to fullback, which I'm not sure if that's what they will decide to do, but it is an option if they do need to. But yeah, Damian McKenzie, I think he was probably, to be honest, one of the only players who was rewarded on form from Super Rugby Pacific in terms of getting that starting lineup spot alongside the debutant Amoni Narawa. I would say that someone like a Tamaiti Williams, who played well throughout Super Rugby Pacific, had a great final against the Chiefs. They went, nah, don't need him. Sama Penifino, great Super Rugby Pacifics. Nah, they've kind of turned away a lot of those guys. And McKenzie was the one who just snuck through the cracks, and managed to get himself that number 10 jersey. And hopefully he does perform, because I think it's a big moment for him. As a lot of people have been saying, he's still not a 10. That's what they're saying. He's not my 10 option. I want him at 15, is what I've heard word on the street, seeing as I live in New Zealand, but I don't really leave the house. So the street's the internet, because, world's scary out there, isn't it, Tim? You've got sirens in your background most videos that we film, don't you?
Trust me. Yeah. Luckily, we haven't had them yet, but yeah, I can definitely agree on that front. But yeah, I mean, even like me, like I think in terms of like McKenzie, I think I originally did think McKenzie was a 15, like back in the day, like when he like first burst into the scene, really, in terms of the All Blacks, I guess, setup. But I think now he's just developed his game so much in terms of his kicking, I guess his playmaking ability, that he is really now more suited, I think, towards that 10 position. And I think, again, you're going to have the likes of Mo'unga, of course, and, eventually Beauden Barrett. We'll have to see what happens with him for the next few years. But, I mean, there's not really a better 10 than him, for the, going forward. So he is really going to be the one to step up really now. And I think if he can take that advantage, it will take that opportunity early in a Rugby World Cup year. I mean, that's even more credit to him, really. And, I really do think this kind of feels like a debut kind of like game for him. In a weird way, because I haven't seen McKenzie play, for the All Blacks in a pretty long time, actually. I mean, I can't think of the last time when was the last time he played? I mean, I think because he didn't play for the All Blacks last year, right? I mean, because he was in Japan.
No, he was in the All Blacks 15, wasn't he?
That's why. Yeah, he was in the All Blacks 15.
So yeah, the last game that he played was probably up against the Irish 15 or Irish A, I think it was. Something along those lines. But yeah, it's been a little while. He's had a few more tough games under the belt, I'd say, in Super Rugby Pacific. But then the Chiefs, they were on that winning streak. So I'd like to think that would give him enough confidence going forward that he'd be able to perform, because, it's still been said. I don't want to play devil's advocate, but some people still say Mo'unga. They don't think he's going to be that same player as he is for the Crusaders, for the All Blacks. So that's where if McKenzie can step into that role and, I guess, prosper in it, then, he could be that starting 10 for the World Cup.
Yeah,
fair enough. Big thing is, just don't get injured. That's the same for all these players. Just don't get injured, because, you don't want to miss that World Cup. It's only like 60 days away. I remember when we were saying it's 950 days away, and now it's actually almost here. So, yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Make sure
I'm getting emotional. It's so close. But no, but I mean, I guess like the only other aspect I wanted to talk about. Well, I mean, actually, there's two aspects I wanted to talk about in terms of the All Blacks. Is one, credit obviously towards Amoni Nara, obviously getting his debut, because I mean that's a big achievement for him himself. I mean, I remember when he was playing for the Blues, I was like, wow, this guy is, he's pretty good, but the problem was that he just wasn't getting enough
5 minutes that you guys played them.
Exactly. That's the thing, is that we would barely play him, because the thing is that we always had Mark Talea or Kev Clark, and at the time, AJ Lamb was obviously ahead of him even in the pecking order. So there was even another guy below. So it was really it really kind of sucks for him in that sense. So it did make sense, for him to obviously kind of transfer to another franchise. And with the Chiefs, I mean they've kind of stolen a gem right there in terms of Narwhal, because I mean, their wingers now look so good in terms of the Super Rugby competition, and I mean he can probably produce what he's done within Super Rugby. I fully believe he can do that. He can produce what we've seen within Super Rugby to the All Black level. I think he has the ability to do that. I mean, he's really just this may be the first time I actually say this because I can't think of another All Black in a long time who is like this, but he kind of reminds me of like a Cheslin Kobe in kind of the build in terms of what he can do in terms of this All Blacks, because the All Blacks have never had a winger like Narwa. Like I can't think of like a winger like him because it's normally like you have a battering ram obviously on the left wing, with the likes of John Lamu and Julian Sevilla and all that. But in terms of like the 14, you always have people like Sever Rees, or you have like, I mean, in the past you had who was it? He was people about 14. It was
Howlett was on that wing, wasn't he?
Yeah, Howlett. I mean, you had was Corey Jane on there? No, you had like Israel Dag, or like you had all these players who they weren't really like a winger, but they were you could see them as so many different positions. But Narwa is literally just a 14. That's literally all I know him as. Like he's not. I can't see him playing like a 15 role or 11 really. Like he is just a 14, and that's the way I kind of see it with like kind of. I know Kobe was the example I gave, but like. He kind of has that kind of sidestep of the way where he has that electrifying, kind of speed to him. So, I mean, that's kind of the best interpretation I can think of him. But I guess like let me just quickly go to the comments here because I can see some good comments there. From Grant saying like Caleb Clark is an incredibly limited player. That's a bold call. But yeah, I mean, I can't really wait. We've had our comments in the background to this. We kind of I guess agree on the front, but at the same time, he can obviously change his game, very quickly in a year's time. That's the thing with Caleb Clark. He actually has the ability to do that. So I think for the meantime, yeah, I do agree. He's a very limited player, but maybe if he's in the All Black setup still going on, after the World Cup, then maybe he has another opportunity to kind of show us what he can do. But I mean, you did also say, Grant, here, I like this. Ben Smith spends a lot of time in the 14. Yeah, that's a good point as well. He's definitely one that he's the best 15 in my opinion. I think in rugby history. So that's why I never really consider him as a 14. But you are right that he did play there as a 14 at points in his career. But I think overall, I mean,
we can't forget Geordie Barrett, can we?
I mean, Geordie Barrett was Geordie. Geordie Barrett.
How many games did they give him? Like 2 there?
It's crazy. The thing is,
I'll go back to it as well in some stage, probably.
Yeah, he's more suited to that, but again, I've always said Will Jordan is the guy I want there, but knowing Ian Foster, he'll never do that. So we'll have to wait, I guess, until the rumors. Yeah, exactly. But I guess like the only other point I want to talk about the All Blacks was just that they've gone with Beauden Barrett. They've gone with him at 15. They've stuck with their guns and they've decided to go with Beauden Barrett, despite what the media has said in terms of, I guess, like his form kind of dipping throughout the year compared to last year. Like, do you think that was the right decision? Like, what do you think on that?
Well, we knew he was going to have at least 2 Barretts in this side, debatably 3. And
you have to have that.
I mean, now that Beauden Barrett has kind of lost the pecking order in terms of who's going to be the fly-half, like everyone's conversation this year was Mo'unga or McKenzie. Barrett hardly even got that honourable mention. So now they've decided, well, we have to have him in there somewhere. So for now, we're going to put him at fullback. It kind of benefits the ABs that they have got a couple injuries of Will Jordan. Sean Stevenson's not injured, but they haven't really put him in the squad properly yet. So, yeah, Beauden Barrett at this stage was probably the only real fullback option other than maybe Damien McKenzie, just with who they've got injured at the moment and who they've got, available in that squad. The All Blacks 15, I think they've gone with Ruben Love, haven't they? As their 15 option, which is interesting because once again, he's probably played more 10 than playing 15 throughout this past maybe 1 or 2 seasons. Peter Feta, he's playing at 10. He could have been a 15 option, maybe Stephen Peter Feta for the ABs if they had decided to go that way. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how he goes at 15 and whether or not the past performances are going to be similar to what we see up against Argentina, or if he's going to be turning back those years, finding some good form, and then maybe, people might be like, okay, well, he can have the 15 jersey for now. We want to see what he's going to do in the future. But Yeah, I think he's probably, to be honest, even without playing this game up against Argentina, they're probably going to give him that 15 jersey next week up against the Springboks as well.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But yeah, I mean that kind of covers the whole, I guess, every team in that sense in terms of the Rugby Championship guys. But I think we might as well give you guys our prediction in terms of what we both think before we kind of end, I guess, kind of more about because is there anything else you want to talk about the Rugby Championship before we kind of go into the predictions? Is there anything else you want to kind of mention?
I'm hoping both games are close. That's the main hope that I've got. Just
Fair
because the last thing we want to see is two sides dominating this first round.
True.
And I mean, theoretically, if there were going to be two teams to dominate, maybe it would be the Springboks and the All Blacks.
Yeah. I mean,
just because I can see,
yeah,
like in both of those games, I can see Australia or Argentina getting the victory. But I think if it's by a large margin, it's going to be the ABs or the BOK. So the only way that two one-sided affairs actually benefits is building the hype for their game next week. But I'd much rather some close games. Maybe if those two sides still get the win, then that's great. But, you know, have the hype for the Rugby Championship. It's short in format. It's going to be exciting. World Cup just around the corner. Just want some good rugby and no injuries.
Exactly. And actually, we completely forgot to mention, and this is a good call here, but Stevenson is actually someone who could have actually fitted in that 15 slot if you needed to, obviously, instead of Bowden Barrett. So obviously, it was kind of a big call to have him not, I guess, in the whole side. But yeah, no, good point there. But yeah, I guess like overall, I guess in terms of the predictions, I guess for this, we'll talk about the whole Rugby Championship. By the way, we're going to talk about the whole Rugby Championship itself. And then we'll kind of just give our take on terms of what we think for this week. So I think for the whole Rugby Championship, what I'm gonna start with you first because I kind of just want to be under the gun. Like, what do you think in terms of, I guess, like fourth position? Who do you think will finish there?
Oh, so rankings aside, well, that's a tricky one, isn't it? Because this first round's going to tell us a lot, and unfortunately, as soon as you have a loss, you're almost guaranteed third or fourth, aren't you? Just with the shortened competition. So it hurts me to say it, but I think, you know, it's going to be a team starting with A in fourth and actually probably a team starting with A in third. And,
okay.
You know,
okay.
I want to see both sides do well, but I think, you know what, I'm going to be really harsh and I'm going to say that Argentina fourth. I think they're going to have a couple very good games, but playing South Africa in South Africa, I think is just going to be that little bit too challenging for the final week of the Rugby Championship. I think they've got a good crack up against the Aussies and actually a good crack up against New Zealand as well, but I am going to say Argentina finished fourth. Okay. I'm going to say Australia finished third because I feel like that first game of the Bledisloe Cup may go the Kiwis' way. And I believe that's actually going to be played in Australia, though, as well, which, I mean, if it does go New Zealand's way, then that's pretty much the Bledisloe Cup over for this year. But, yeah, I'm going to go with Australian third. Then, this is the tricky part. How about I do the bottom half and you do the top half?
Yeah, I mean, but the thing for me is that mine's actually a bit different to yours already. So this is where I'll say for me, it's not too different, but I'm actually switching those two around. I actually think the Wallabies could come fourth in this competition, just because it's Eddie Jones's first time in the Rugby Championship for a very long time. And again, you have to remember that they're playing the Boks at home first. It's a pretty difficult fixture to start off, I guess, your kind of the competition. And I think, you know, if Argentina, in my eyes, I mean, this is maybe a bold prediction, guys, but I could actually see Argentina beating the All Blacks in Argentina. I can actually see that happening. So I actually think they could win that. And they could maybe beat the the Wallabies in Australia. They have a good opportunity to do that. So I kind of have them at third position, but
I have a question.
Yeah.
So if you've got them beating the All Blacks and beating the Wallabies in a three-match competition,
I think each side will have two. I think each side will have 2 wins but 1 loss. Okay. So like Australia will be the only team with 3 will be with 3 defeats. But then I think Argentina will have 2 wins and 1 loss. I think. Do I go over the rest? Do you want me to say like the rest in terms of what I think in second and first?
I think we know the remaining teams, but Who are you going first out of those two? I assume two wins, one loss.
Yes, yeah. For every side, every side is gonna lose once. I think that's what's gonna happen, and it'll come down towards, I guess, like the points difference. That makes sense. So because it's gonna come down towards points difference, I do think the Box will come second, and I think then it'll be the All Blacks who come first. I just think because you also have to remember that the All Blacks are playing South Africa at home, and eventually a defining fixture actually in this Rugby Championship, because I do think they actually may get the win there. But I have a funny feeling that because I don't know, I feel like Argentina could do it. I just have that gut feeling. I mean, maybe my gut's completely wrong here, but I just have a funny feeling that they could do something there. But then yeah, no, I'm saying, like, obviously South Africa, they'll beat the Wallabies, and I think they'll beat Argentina, but they'll lose against the All Blacks. And then yeah, I think I'm saying the All Blacks will lose against Argentina. And then I'm thinking they'll beat the Box and the Wallabies. So look, I know it's pretty bold to say this, but I think it's gonna be very close, because whenever I look back at the previous results, actually, in terms of the condensed Rugby Championships, and it's actually pretty close whenever these sides actually played against each other. Again, you have to remember that, I think it was like 2011. If it was only a Tri-Nations back then, but still, it was pretty close in terms of the score. But yeah, no, I think overall it's going to be very fascinating to see what happens. But what do you think, though? What's your prediction for this?
I'm still thinking. See, it's that game in New Zealand for me that I can't decide on, or New Zealand versus South Africa, because we have seen the selection that South Africa have gone with up against the Australians, and I have to say that is, that's a selection of strategy. New Zealand versus Argentina, I'm trying to work out what the strategy is for that selection, and I can't really work it out to a certain extent for some of the positions. So it makes me wonder, if they're going with that side up against Argentina, what type of team could we see facing up against South Africa and New Zealand? Is that the game that they decide, we'll just chuck all the young players out there and see how they go? Or is it going to be maybe the form players from that game up against Argentina? Hey, you got one.
Got the support.
Or, yeah, you know what? I'm going to say, I'm going to go with the Springboks #1.
Whoa, that's a big call. I mean, I just don't know. I mean, the thing is, like I do agree that the only thing that may kind of, like, I don't know, go in terms of the Box favor going into that second game is that technically, I'm saying this technically, the All Blacks have kind of showed their cards already in terms of that Argentina game, because they've gone with pretty much the squad you would expect. In terms of a fully strength squad, except, bar, I guess, like 2 players really. But then for the Box, really, they haven't really shown all their cards yet going off the Wallabies game. So they still have a lot of, like, I guess, like, tricks under their belts that they can obviously use in terms of that second game. So you never know. Maybe that's what kind of gets them over the line, kind of more of that unpredictability factor in terms of that, I guess, which players could actually make the difference. But yeah, no, I like it. I like it. So the Kiwis gone with the Box win, and the South African fan has gone with That's great.
I liked your theory of the points differential being the deciding factor, though.
I think that's what it's going to be.
And the reason I just slightly edged to South Africa is I feel that they will beat Argentina by not a huge margin, but still a more sufficient margin than if they are beaten by the All Blacks. Like, I feel like if the All Blacks beat South Africa, it's only going to be maybe by 7 or somewhere around there, or if South Africa get the win, it may only be by 7.
Exactly, so, but you have to remember that I think the Wallabies will also. I'm thinking that the Wallabies could actually lose by a lot against the All Blacks in Australia. I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong in saying this, but I just think everyone's gonna have that, like, feeling like where the Wallabies could do something against the All Blacks. Because I think where's that game being played? Is it at the SMG? Is it there? I think
SMG. That's a type of firearm, Tim.
No,
FMG,
no,
is it?
No, FMG. That's it. Yeah. I'm not sure which. It's like the new stadium. I forgot what it's called. Like it's the new stadium, which is like, I think, is it Sydney, or is it like in And
Oh,
it's
is it
weird.
the old?
I can't remember why. I
Oh,
can't
I
remember
can
what it's
see
called.
it. Is it the
Oh
Waratahs home stadium?
no. It's where
No.
they held like. Okay, do you know like it's where they held like the England Wallabies games recently? It's where like even the Wallabies played against the All Blacks when they had the biggest scoreline in Wallabies history when they beat them like 46 points to like 24. So it was like
Oh, is it Optus? Oh, the MCG is what. Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. I knew it was something close. Like was it MCG?
MCG, Melbourne Cricket
MCG. Yeah.
Ground.
So I think that's where it's
Oh,
being
rugby.
played. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think actually in terms of history there, the Wallabies actually have a better record there. I think compared to the All Blacks, which is kind of in their favor. But you have to remember, like last year, I mean, it was a pretty close game actually between both of them. But the All Blacks kind of got the job at the end of the day. I don't think it'll be that. I don't think it'll be as close as what we saw like kind of last year. So that's kind of the reason why I'm hedging my bet maybe towards the All Blacks in this one. But yeah, we'll see what happens, of course. But I guess that's kind of it in terms of the rugby championship chat. I mean, again, we would normally kind of just finish here, guys, but I think we have to kind of dedicate just a few questions here, just in terms of what we think about the new 2026 international competition. It's kind of going to help me. What do you think of it overall? I think that's just kind of the main thing. I want to just ask you first. What do you think of the whole concept?
It adds a little bit more, I guess, tension into the games that take place during July and November.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit worried that it's going to leave any side outside of the top 12 behind in terms of their international games, because every once in a while you do get to see an international side maybe ranked about 14th, 15th, playing a side that's somewhere near that top 10. Whereas
Exactly.
with this new format, I think that might take that completely away. But I mean, it's always been that question of Southern Hemisphere versus Northern Hemisphere. We normally see them tour and play each other, but now each game's going to have that little bit more feeling, a little bit similar to what we saw for, was it the Autumn Nations Cup series when they involved Fiji and Georgia? It kind of had that little bit more of an important feel for when their games were taking place. And I guess it will certainly shake up the world rankings for those top 12 sides because, if you're winning and you're playing well, you're going to end up getting yourself a few more points on the board. But yeah, it's going to be intriguing to see how they do it. And I think it's going to be possibly leading. I know that they've talked about it every second year. So does that mean that maybe every year in between there, we can try and get that Club World Cup thing going that they've been talking about for about 5 years or so?
I'm just wondering how it would work because in terms of the calendar, like, because you have to always remember that there's a Lions series that will never go away in terms of like the global calendar, and that will count obviously towards that's an international kind of thing. Well, it's a bit of both really because you're getting a lot of the club players to come play in terms of Lions, and then you're facing against an international team. So, but again, that normally takes place, you could say, within the. When does that normally take place? It's more like the July, like it's like July, June,
I think
July, really. It's like
is it a little bit sooner?
July,
I think it
August.
might be maybe May and June. Is it? I think it's normally done definitely before the Rugby Championship in August. They normally have it all done by. It's just whether or not it does go into July. I'm trying to think of when that Springboks versus British and Irish Lions one was. In fact, we're going to do a quick little check on the Google.
I think it was like July, August. I could be wrong, but like because they also have to
British
give
and
time.
Irish Lions is a long thing to type.
But also, it may depend obviously on who you're facing because with the URC,
Oh, no.
I mean,
August.
all of that. August,
early August, and then late July was actually when they squeezed it in. So I guess that would actually be after the July internationals.
That's what I'm thinking.
That it takes place.
Interesting. So that's what may happen then. Like where if it was to happen so they could have a Lions tour the same year as. Is that how it worked? They would have the Lions tour the same year as this new
2026 was one of the years mentioned, wasn't it?
Yeah, and 2025 is the Lions tour.
2025. So they shouldn't overlap.
They shouldn't overlap.
I think the Lions tour should be in between, and then there should be one free year, I think, maybe. Unless that is the World Cup year. It might actually be the World Cup year. So maybe no 3 years, maybe no Club World Cup. Very sad.
Yeah, even like Grant said, it's in July. So yeah, fair. Oh, and I like the prediction, by the way. Argentina first. that's a bold one. Fair enough. I like it. I like it a lot. But Yeah, I mean, like, it's just really fascinating to see what actually happens in this competition because, like you said, this really does kind of exclude a lot of the tier 2 nations overall from kind of like, I guess, competing against tier 1 nations. And I mean, the point that we actually haven't mentioned yet with this whole competition is that there will actually be well, it's been said that there will be a promotion and relegation kind of system in terms of having like this competition itself and then having one below it to allow teams to kind of move up and down. But it's really good, but I think that's only going to take place actually 4 years after the competition kind of gets off. So it's only going to start like in 2030 is what they're saying. So really for 4 years, you're not going to have any tier 2 nation play against the tier 1 nations. Like that's
Although they've got the 2 invitational sides, don't they?
Yeah.
That get to make their way in. So you'd assume that Japan will be one of them.
Yeah,
mainly because I feel like they can bring quite a big market, and then maybe the other side is a Pacific Island team, whether it's Fiji or maybe Samoa, maybe whoever does better in the World Cup gets that opportunity or some sort of thing. Maybe they have a qualification. I mean, they have a Pacific Nations Cup most years as well.
That could be what decides it. Like, you never know.
Top 2 sides go through.
That'd be mad. And like Japan joins that, like for the just for that one, maybe to decide. I don't know,
maybe.
But
I mean, that's what they're doing this year. They've got Japan in that Pacific Nations competition.
So maybe that could be the way that you decided. But no, I think overall, I think we're kind of in the same mindset where this competition is probably going to help maybe the game grow, obviously from a commercial standpoint, and help kind of like the game, I guess, expand in terms of different nations. But obviously, it does damage, I guess, or kind of hinders a lot of opportunities in terms of the tier 2 nations to kind of improve the level of rugby they want to get to. So, yeah, it's an interesting, I guess, idea that's been brought forward now officially. But we'll have to wait and see, obviously, what happens as the years kind of get on and as it gets closer, of course, because it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But for now, we don't have to kind of worry about this. We're going to still stick to the same kind of automations, I guess you can say, cycle and July internationals. But yeah, I mean, is there anything else you want to cover in terms of that front, or is that kind of it in terms of the?
I think I hope they do some sort of qualification process for those other 2 sides rather than just handing it to teams. I feel like there should be some sort of competitive competition, whether or not that's like a 16-team knockout format or something that you can squeeze in. Because I mean, at the end of the day, these other sides that are lower ranked, like they're not playing as much rugby, so why not give them some sort of big competition that they can work towards? Have 4 groups of 4, and then top 2 sides go through to a quarters, or even if you just have to have the number 1 side from each group go through to semi-finals, and then the winner of those 2, I guess, individual finals, then make their way through to that competition. I assume they're going Southern Hemisphere sides, though, by the sounds of it, just with the way that it was talked about. But, someone like a Georgia could be worth a real good crack of getting some time up against some Six Nations side. A couple of those other sides, such as a Portugal or someone, if they keep on improving, perhaps in the future they get the opportunity. It's just whether or not they ever consider extending it from just the 12 sides to maybe, 14 or 16.
Extending the olive branch. It's going to be very fascinating to see what happens there. But I guess like there was one other point I actually wanted to mention was, do you think for this competition they'll maybe, I don't know, bring up the idea of maybe having a neutral ground, maybe where it's not played within the Northern Hemisphere or Southern Hemisphere, like where maybe, I don't know, it gets to maybe like you can say the playoffs. You can maybe say this competition. I don't know if you have like a semi-final and a final. Maybe that's the way it'll happen. I'm not sure, obviously, what will happen in that sense. If it's gonna be like quarterfinals in that way. But do you think they could do it in a neutral like location, or do you think they just stick it to like having it like the finals just designated each? It's like what you have of the Heineken Cup, like where you have it just designated beforehand, like where it's gonna be played. Like, it's gonna be in Dublin this year. It's gonna be in France this year. It's gonna be like do you think it'll be kind of on the lines of that, or do you think it'll be just it's going to be in a neutral location, like I don't know, the US, for example, or like I don't know, Asia, or just what do you think on that front?
I think that depending on what they decide to do, they might consider having it as whoever's top qualifier gets a home field advantage. Although, have they fully committed to the fact that there's going to be some sort of final, or is it just similar to the English Premier League? how it's whoever's first just wins the thing automatically type thing.
Yeah.
Because
they haven't really said. That's the thing. Like, there's a lot of like, I guess that they haven't really discussed yet in terms of that front, because I did see like within I guess like an article sent up that could still be a possibility that they'll introduce maybe closer to the time, but yeah,
because I feel like without a final, it does feel slightly anticlimactic to a certain extent. But then saying that, that's actually how a few of the competitions are. Like the Rugby Championship doesn't have a final, the Six Nations doesn't have a final. So it's an extra week of the calendar that they've got to try and allow for, which I think they're already trying to squeeze action in. You know, they're already doing it during an international window. So that means no extra weeks that you need to take part in. So I think it will just be whoever's top wins the thing. And it could end up in a similar situation to the World Test Championship a little bit, how it's, you know, luckily for them, they've got a final for that cricket side of things. But if it didn't, it would just be left unconfirmed, I guess you could say, unless maybe the two sides that came first and second face each other the first round of the next July internationals. Maybe that helps.
Yeah,
qualification criteria. I like this tradition here. I don't think I'll get qualified, would I, Tim? My beard's pretty patchy.
Oh, I don't have a beard at the moment, so I'll just be like disqualified, really.
You can be the referee.
Exactly. Maybe that's the way we'll do it. But yeah, I mean, look, I mean, I guess we'll kind of finish it there, I guess, for this first episode, guys, of the Rugby Recap. Hopefully you guys obviously enjoyed this. I mean, this is kind of going to be kind of a regular thing we'll do throughout, you know, each week. Again, we'll probably do just to let you guys know, the whole idea around this is that we'll probably be doing a live kind of version of the podcast. Either I'd say on a Thursday or Friday, just depending on, you know, which day. But no matter what, I think we'll probably do a review of kind of what's happened throughout, I guess, the weekend, probably on a Monday, which will be released. But it will be a pre-recorded version, so not a live, but just a pre-recorded version. That'll be slightly, you know, more kind of less condensed than what we obviously do in terms of the live podcast. But yeah, I mean, of course, like this kind of video, guys. Yeah, I was about to say live stream, but it is kind of technically a live stream. But yeah, just like the video, guys. Definitely subscribe to our channel. That'd be greatly appreciated. But yeah, I mean, is there anything else you want to say before we kind of wrap this up?
Well, like I said, close games. That's what we want.
Close games. You know? Fair enough.
No one-sided affairs, so we have plenty more to talk about on Monday.
Exactly. Not like just like demolishings, really. But yeah, of course, check out the oh my gosh, it's like normally I do it this way, but actually
isn't it?
It's out this way. Yeah. Check out the Kiwi lads, check out Rugby myself, and yeah, we'll see you guys next time.